Okay, picture this. Someone is about to record their very first video. They're sitting in a bedroom or a corner of an apartment or maybe a garage that still smells faintly like a garage. And they've spent the last 20 minutes trying to make a tiny piece of their life. This tiny piece look like somewhere a person on the internet might actually want to stay for a while. The phone isn't even on a tripod. It's propped up against a stack of books or a cereal box or, honestly, sometimes a shoe. Whatever keeps it upright long enough to press record. The background has been rearranged 4 times in the last 20 minutes. Not because any of the arrangements were bad, because none of them felt like they belonged to anybody yet. There are notes nearby, handwritten, probably, or typed into the notes app at 2 in the morning. The kind of notes that feel genius at the time and now, with the red light about to blink on, read like somebody else's homework. Bullet points that don't connect. A joke that isn't as funny out loud as it was in your head. An opening line crossed out and rewritten 3 separate times, and none of the 3 are what actually comes out of your mouth in about 40 seconds. This person has done the research, and I mean the research. The ideal video length, the thumbnail psychology, what a hook is supposed to do in the first 8 seconds, whether you're supposed to look at the lens or slightly past it, what the algorithm is rumored to reward this month versus what it rewarded 4 months ago, which is already different. It's always already different. They know things. They have prepared. None of it makes the next 10 seconds less excruciating. Because here's what nobody warns you about that specific moment. There is nobody on that other side of the lens. Not a single person. No subscriber count ticking anywhere. No comment section that could say something encouraging or devastating. No format anyone's expecting because there isn't anybody yet. For maybe the only time in this creative life they're about to start, there's not a single person on earth with an opinion about what they should make next. And that should feel like freedom. It doesn't. It feels like standing at the edge of a pool that, well, just might not have water in it. They're not thinking about fame. That part matters, actually. So with that, because we're going to come back to it, they're not sitting there fantasizing about a verified badge or a brand deal or getting recognized at the grocery store. What they want, what's actually underneath the system right now, is something much smaller and much more specific. They want one person, somewhere in the vast world, to watch this and think, oh my God, you too? Like someone out there who shares their weird sense of humor, their specific obsession, the way they notice things other people walk past. A tiny private piece of themselves reflected back from a total stranger's screen. They don't know who that person is. They genuinely don't even know if that person exists. Statistically, mathematically, there is a real chance no one is ever going to see this. And they press record anyway. And they say hello to an audience of essentially nobody, and they begin. Time does the thing time does, which is pass in a way that feels both instant and impossibly slow, depending on which week you ask. And eventually, not immediately, someone finds them. than someone else. A video connects harder than the others did for reasons that aren't clear even to the person who made it. People start coming back. Actual patterns start to form and they can see them now. This subject gets clicked. This specific joke gets quoted back at them in the comments. This experiment, quietly, mercifully disappears and is never spoke of again. And then, this is the part that sneaks up on everyone. It stops being someone found me and starts being someone recognizes me. Those are not the same sentence. People know what clicking on the person's video is supposed to feel before they even clicked it. The dream from the empty room actually happened. Somebody out there is thinking, oh my God, you too, on a regular basis now. But recognition, it turns out, comes with a passenger nobody mentions back when the room was empty. Expectation gets in the car too. It doesn't announce itself. It just starts riding along. There's another moment. Same red light, same little blink, except the room isn't empty and it will never be empty again. Where the question has completely flipped on them. See, in the beginning, the question was, would anyone recognize themselves in this? But now the question is, how much can I change before people who finally found me stop recognizing me at all? And that's where we're going to leave that person. Not resolved, not fixed, just standing there, camera on, with a different fear than the one they started with. Okay, so this has been bugging me a while now. So we talk about audiences like they're being unreasonable. Like they're the ones who don't know what they want. Give me something new, they say. And then they rewatch the same 50-episode anime for the 4th time, or reread the enemies to lovers book they already own in 3 formats. Or click on the 15th video from a guy who does the exact same let's overanalyze a weird product format he's done for 6 years. And creators, us, basically all of us, have been trained to treat that as some kind of contradiction to manage. Like the audience is a customer with conflicting demands and we have to guess correctly or get fired. Except, I don't think it's a contradiction. I think we've been asking the wrong question the entire time. Nobody actually wants new. That's not, well, I want to say that properly, actually. So nobody wants the brand new, never seen that before in the way we think they do. What they want is the thing they already trust, with something left inside that they haven't found yet. That's it. That's the whole ask. Give me a shape I recognize and hide something I haven't discovered inside the shape. And this is where creators mess up constantly. Because we hear, give me something different, and we interpret that as abandon the thing that got you here. Which, no, nobody is saying that. Nobody means that. It's like ordering the same dish at a restaurant you love for the 40th time and telling the chef you want it to taste different. And the chef, hearing that, goes, okay, burn the building and open a car wash instead. Totally illogical, in my opinion. So take, I could be butchering her name, I apologize, Safiya Nygaard. Genuinely, like, look at her catalog. Beauty experiments, weird fashion history, strange products off the internet, travel stuff, which is why I watch her. deep dives into things that have nothing to do with each other on paper. If you try to describe her niche, you'd fail immediately because the subject keeps moving. But nobody watching feels lost. And the crazy thing is it's not that the topic is what's actually consistent. It's her. It's the specific way she pokes at something. Curious, skeptical, willing to go way too far down a hole most people would have abandoned after 5 minutes. That's the recognizable part. The lipstick or the weird 1800s beauty ritual is just whatever she happens to point that perspective at this week. And Drew Gooden's the same move from a different angle. Movies, ad campaigns, internet nonsense, some genuinely cursed product. The man will cover anything if it's bizarre enough. And people don't click because they're already dying to know his opinion on a specific piece of furniture. They click because they want to know what Drew noticed about it. The lens is the brand, not the subject. And that's the thing though, like, once your perspective becomes the recognizable part instead of your subject matter, you've basically bought yourself an enormous amount of room to move around in. Which sounds like the happy ending of the video, right? Okay, so let me just, call it good. Okay, guys, have fun. Bye. See you later. Except, it's not. It's not. And so don't get too comfortable. Because here's a mistake I keep seeing people make with this exact idea. They think perspective over subject means they solve the problem permanently. Like once you establish a voice, let me repeat that. Once you establish a voice, you're safe forever. You're not. You're not. Because you just moved the goalpost from don't change the topic to don't change the voice. And the voice is the much scarier thing to accidentally lose because you can't always tell when it's drifting. Ludwig is useful, weirdly, because he basically built an entire creative identity out of variety itself. Gaming, competitions, commentary, a multi-day event, a game show, whatever ridiculous experiment is happening that month. None of it is one lane. And yet, people tune in with a pretty specific expectation of what a Ludwig thing is going to feel like. The variety is the consistent part, which, if you think about that for more than a second, is kind of an insane trick to pull off, and most people can't. Same with Doug Doug, honestly, in a different flavor. See, he'll build these incredibly ridiculous systems, audience-controlled chaos, some AI doing something it shouldn't be allowed to do, and the actual content of any given stream is unpredictable. But the shape underneath it is familiar. You know the kind of chaos you're signing up for, even though you have no idea what the chaos is actually going to look like this time. That's the cleanest version of familiar structure, unfamiliar experience that I can think of. And it's why it works. So that's the promising half of this. Perspective over subject, structure over specific content, and repetition doesn't feel like repetition anymore. It feels like range. Except Sorry. Except for something. Because just build a recognizable perspective instead of a repeatable format is great advice that's nearly impossible to execute on purpose. You don't get to sit down one day and decide, my perspective will be curious but skeptical, like the way Safiya is, or mine will be observational chaos, like Dug's. Those things get discovered by accident over years through hundreds of failed videos that nobody remembers, and then get retroactively described as a strategy once they've worked. Which means most of the advice about find your perspective is basic astrology for creators. Like, it sounds specific, but it's not actionable. It's a description of an outcome dressed up as a plan. And I don't know why it's a thing. We keep teaching authenticity like it's a checklist item you complete once. Step 4, be yourself. Okay. Thanks. Incredibly beneficial to life. Like, yeah. So early on, here's a little bit of a backstory. A personal bit. I tried to force a voice onto videos that didn't have one yet. I'd watched someone whose perspective clearly worked, and I tried to reverse engineer the tone without actually having lived my way into it. And it read exactly like what it was. Cosplay. You can feel it when a creator is doing an impression of confidence instead of actually having any. Audiences might not be able to name what's off, but they bounce. Not because the topic's wrong, it's because the perspective was borrowed. And it connects to a bit of advice that gets treated as ancient wisdom, but is actually a scam. Subvert the trope. Like, audience is bored of the chosen one, bored of the love triangle, bored of fake dating, bored of enemy to lovers. So subvert it, twist it, announce that you're aware it's a cliche. Except awareness of a cliche isn't the same as earning the emotion the cliche exists to deliver. There's research on this, like a study looking at conflicted, heavy dialogue found that just cranking up conflict in a scene didn't improve how much people enjoyed it or thought it was well written, which should be terrifying to anybody who's ever been told, add more tension, as if tension was a seasoning you were sprinkling on at the end. It's not. Like, the audience isn't grading you on how much friction is technically present. They're grading you on whether that friction meant a damn thing. So when a creator subverts a trope by just winking at the camera, hey, I know this is the chosen thing, isn't that funny? See, that's not subversion. That's a disclaimer. You're basically putting a warning label on a broken product instead of fixing the damn thing. Audiences aren't tired of the chosen one. They're tired of chosen ones who never had to earn the choosing. They're tired of prophecies standing in for actual characterization. Take away that prophecy and give that person real stakes, real cost, real reasons the world specifically needs them, and suddenly the trope people claim to hate works exactly as well as it always did. Which is crazy because it means the trope is not the problem. The trope is the scapegoat. The actual problem is the craft, the use of it, the pace, the casualty, the characterization, whether the emotional payoff is earned or assumed. But the trope is dead is a much easier sentence to say in a comment section than the execution failed to justify its own. So that's the sentence people always reach for. And this is the mistake I keep seeing. Like, creators hear audiences hate this trope and they respond by removing it instead of asking which version of the trope people actually hate. Like, there's a survey where romance readers named forbidden romance and enemies to lovers as their favorites, while ranking love triangles and fake dating near the bottom of the same list. Same genre, same readers, totally different tolerance depending on the promise being made and whether the book kept it. Which tells you that the complaint was never, I hate this genre. The complaint is always more specific than that. And creators keep treating it like a blanket ban instead of doing the harder work of asking, which promise is this making, and which version breaks the promise? So fake dating, if you actually sit with it, is a device for letting someone act on desire without admitting to it yet. Enemies to lovers turns attraction into something you can dramatize through conflict, instead of having to write it as a straight-up confession. The chosen one takes private insecurity and makes it a public problem the character has to solve out loud. A love triangle isn't really about two people. It's a way to dramatize someone torn between two futures, two identities, two versions of who they could be. Those aren't tired plot devices. They're emotional contracts. Give me danger with an exit. Give me intimacy without immediate vulnerability. Give me chaos with a promise it resolves into order. See, when a story keeps that contract, the trope basically becomes invisible because nobody complains about machinery they can't see working correctly underneath the floor. So creators hear audiences say they hate this and go fixing the wrong layer. And then they're shocked when the next thing they make doesn't land either, because they threw out the emotional machinery along with the label. And the machinery was never the problem. Okay, here's where it gets interesting, because everything I've just said applies to more than just tropes. It applies to creators themselves, to you specifically, if you've made anything at all. Like, remember the empty room. Remember that actual dream wasn't fame, it was recognition. Somebody out there thinking, oh my god, you too. Okay, so hold that next to this. The exact mechanism that gets you recognized is repetition. You can't be known for something you've only done once. Recognition requires a version of the same thing enough times that a pattern forms in someone's head, which means the very tool that gets you found is the same tool that, left unchecked, will eventually get you trapped. It's not a metaphor. It's brutal reality. It's how a pattern recognition works in another person's brain. You cannot simultaneously be brand new to someone and instantly recognizable to them at the same time. Those two states require different amounts of exposure. And the entire arc of a creative career is the slow trade of one for the other. So, the find your voice and then be recognizable advice and the stay authentic, keep evolving advice are not actually compatible or complete instructions. They're competing forces disguised as complementary. Nobody tells you this. They just hand you both instructions at once like they're two steps on the same staircase. When in reality, they're pulling you in two opposite directions the whole time. And that tension between them gets quietly worse the more successful you get. Which brings me to the main example that I couldn't stop thinking about when I was researching this topic. Stephenie Meyer, because I think about it more often, more than is probably healthy. See, Twilight didn't just make Stephenie Meyer famous. It made her into a category. I mean, think about it. Like, her name stopped meaning a person who writes books and started meaning supernatural YA romance, specifically vampires. And so, when she published The Host, which is my favorite of hers, by the way, audience, adult science fiction, alien occupation, a completely different set of ideas and questions about identity, body, and control. The actual quality of that book didn't matter as much as the fact that it wasn't the thing her name had come to mean. People weren't approaching it as a new novel by a person who happens to be an author. They were approaching it as a departure from a brand they already mentally installed onto her. And that's the trap nobody warns you when they say build a recognizable identity. The identity isn't owned by you once it's big enough. It's co-owned, unofficially, by everyone who discovered you through that specific version. You can absolutely make other things, but the audience gets a vote on whether those things count as you. And to be frank, that vote isn't always fair. And it's not about quality. It's functionally nothing you can do about it in advance, honestly. So in real life, what ends up happening is creators start pre-flinching. They feel the cage forming, sometimes years before they ever admit it out loud. And they start quietly filtering their own ideas before anyone even reacts. Not, will this be good? But, will this be allowed? And that's a different question. It's a much smaller, sadder one. And it's asked by people who used to make things in an empty room where nobody had an opinion yet. And the algorithm makes it worse, actively, on purpose, by design. Recommendation systems don't optimize for, did this deepen an artist's range? They optimize for engagement, predictability, recognizable content. Is somehow simply more efficient at generating engagement than a genuine risk is. And so creators aren't just managing an audience's expectations anymore. They're managing a machine that is mathematically incentivized to keep shoving them back toward the thing that already worked. Every single time they try to drift. Like, the algorithm doesn't hate change. It's indifferent to it in the most punishing way possible. It quietly rewards the safe thing, slightly more, over and over, until the safe thing is the only thing that feels survivable to make. Which means the audience isn't the only cage anymore. There's a second one, invisible, sitting underneath the platforms themselves. And it shapes decisions creators think are purely creative when they're actually economic. Beyoncé is the example I keep coming back to when I want to believe that this isn't a life sentence, actually. Because she's the one of the rare cases where the identity genuinely detached from the genre. Chef's kiss. Rap into pop into Renaissance, leaning hard into home and dance music with real lineage behind it. Cowboy Carter going directly at country, a genre with a whole gatekeeping apparatus built specifically to keep people like her out. And the audience didn't experience that as she abandoned who she was. They experienced as, of course she did this too. Because somewhere along the way, what the people were actually attached to stopped being the genre and became her. The ambition, the specific way she approaches a project, the sense that whatever she touches gets fully, obsessively finished. The genre became optional. The artist became the constant. And I know this sounds like an exception that proves it's possible, and it is. But I don't want to oversell it because that kind of detaches from, well, that kind of detachment, actually, from your category usually only gets earned after enormous amounts of goodwill has already been banked. Not everybody gets to skip the part where the audience is still deciding whether they're attached to you or to the box you first showed up in. And here's the part that actually keeps me up at night about this. Personally, since apparently that's the thought behind everything today, we train creators backwards. Biggest pet peeve of mine. Because we tell people, find your niche first. Understand what performs. Listen to the data. Repeat what works. And once you build an audience inside that box, you can finally start to be your authentic self inside it. Box first, self second. However, I think it's that, but reversed. Totally reversed, because the healthier order, in my opinion, is make the thing you can't stop wanting to make. Let the patterns emerge on their own from that. And then find out what box people decided to put you in. Because if the work changes later, that's not you failing to stay in your lane. That's just the next honest thing the person was always going to make. But almost nobody gets taught in that order, because box first is easier to monetize and easier to teach in a 10-minute video about growing your channel. Whew. Sorry guys, I need a minute. Whew. Okay. And this is the part where it gets a little rocky. Because I don't think audiences are the villains of the story. And I don't want this to sound like fans are the problem, poor, misunderstood creators out there. Because that's not it either. There's a real legitimate other side here. Like if somebody found you through history videos or a specific series or a particular great game or a genre of music, they are not obligated to follow you into whatever you decide to do next. That's not audience cruelty. That's just an exchange. You made a thing. They liked that thing specifically. You are now, you are now making a different thing. They're allowed not to want that different thing. Nobody signs a lifetime contract by clicking subscribe. And this is the issue. Like, creative growth doesn't automatically deserve support just because it represents growth for the person doing it. Sometimes, genuinely, the experiment doesn't work. Sometimes the exact element that made the earlier stuff function gets removed right along with the repetition the creator was trying to escape. And what's left isn't bold, new direction. It's just worse. Like, audiences aren't always saying you're not allowed to change. A lot of the time, what they're saying is much less dramatic. This isn't what I'm here for. And stop. Full stop. That's it. And it's not betrayal, guys. It's just an honest update to a relationship that was always conditional in the first place. So I guess the better question isn't should creators listen to audiences or ignore them? It's more how the responsibility actually splits between the two sides, because it never goes in one direction. Creators need enough room to find out what their work can become. Audiences need enough continuity to recognize why they showed up to begin with. Sometimes both of those can be met at once, and sometimes they genuinely can't. And somebody loses something, and it's not automatically proof that anybody did anything wrong. Like, losing part of an audience isn't always evidence of a mistake. Sometimes it's just the toll, the price you pay for choosing to keep discovering something instead of agreeing to stay permanently recognizable, which is a cost, an actual real cost. Not a myth creators tell themselves to feel brave about a bad decision. And about that, I think this is where the whole familiarity versus sameness thing stops being a marketing question and becomes something closer to a psychology question. Because the line isn't fixed. It's not 5% new content, 95% familiar. Ship it. One person out there will happily consume 50 variations on the same emotional beat and never once feel bored. Somebody else taps out after the third one, convinced the whole thing has gone stale. Same content, wildly different thresholds, which means creators are navigating a boundary that literally doesn't exist in the same place for every single person watching. And no amount of audience research fully resolves that. Because the audience isn't one person with one opinion. It's thousands of different thresholds wearing the same subscribe button. And that's the part that actually gets me. Like, we talk about the audience like it's a single organism with a single tolerance for repetition, when it's actually a crowd of individuals who disagree with each other constantly, and the creator has to somehow triangulate a moving average of a boundary none of them can name out loud for themselves even. And that's something worth sitting with, honestly, because it complicates the whole just listen to your audience advice that people give constantly. Like a click, a watch, a completed episode is not automatically a vote of approval. People finish things out of curiosity, or out of algorithmic momentum, or out of hate watching, or because switching costs are annoying, or because they're fandom obligated to see how it ends even though they've hated the last 3 seasons. Consumption gets treated like consent constantly, and it's not the same thing. Which means the numbers say keep doing this is partially true, but it's also just measuring inertia dressed up as enthusiasm. So when a creator gets told the data says your audience wants more of X, well, that sentence is doing a lot of unearned work. More of X could mean genuine desire, or it could mean nobody's offered them anything else yet. It could mean they're finishing out of obligation while quietly resenting every episode. The data cannot tell you those things on its own. Only a creator paying attention to more than one retention graph has any shot at telling the difference. And most don't bother because the graph is right there, right in front of their face. And asking harder questions isn't. Because if you push on this long enough, you start to notice something weird. That the same exact mechanism happening to genres and formats and entire platforms. It's not just to individual creators. Like, think how many times a genre is declared dead. Like the vampire romance wave. Then everyone insisting it's over, and then it's back in a slightly different costume a few years later and feels fresh again to the exact same readers who swore they were done with it. That's not genre resurrecting. That's the difference between a genre going stale versus a genuinely new writer finding an angle inside the same bones nobody has used yet. The genre wasn't tired. Specific executions of it were, very much. Big difference. Constantly flattened into a single sentence. People are over this now. Which loops all the way back to the empty room, actually. Which, okay, yeah, let's go there, because I think this is the thing underneath it all. That creator, alone with a phone propped on a cereal box, wasn't hoping to be original in the sense we usually mean it. They weren't trying to invent a genre nobody's ever seen. They were hoping somebody would recognize something already inside them. Recognition was the goal from the first second. And the entire arc of what happened after the algorithm, the audience thresholds, the Stephenie Meyer problem, the Beyoncé exception, all of it is just that same original wish for recognition slowly getting complicated by scale. Until please see me turns into please let me keep changing and still let me be seen. Same wish, same person, functionally, just standing in a much more crowded room than the one they started in, where now everybody has an opinion about what they should make next, which is the exact thing that wasn't true in the beginning, and weirdly, the exact thing they were hoping for the entire time. I don't know. I keep circling this and and all I can think about is how suspicious I am of anybody who says there's a perfect clean fix to this all. Trust your voice is true, but useless. Because your voice isn't a fixed object you can consult like a compass. It's something that is formed by every choice you make, including the ones you're making right now based on what you think people want from you. Listen to your audience is true but dangerous, because the audience isn't one person, and consumption isn't consent. And the loudest complaint in a comment section is not automatically the most representative one. Stay authentic is true, but also kind of a trap, because authenticity gets treated as a fixed identity you're supposed to protect, where the person who started this whole thing in an empty room didn't have an identity yet. He had curiosity. The identity showed up later, assembled out of whatever the audience decided to notice and reward. So maybe the bluntest version of this isn't, here's how to stay familiar without going stale. It's more like, the discomfort never fully goes away, and the creators who last aren't the ones who solved it. They're the ones who kept making things anyway, with the discomfort, just sort of riding along the whole time, uninvited, never fully resolved. And I know that's not a satisfying place to land, and it's only because the neat version of this would just be another performance of certainty. And, we've kind of been talking about this the whole time. Creators pretending they've resolved something they haven't, because the resolved sells better than the honesty. Anyway, so that's just where I'm at with it. So if this sent you down a rabbit hole you absolutely did not plan on visiting today, like the video and subscribe, because that's pretty much what we do around here. And if one dose of my curiosity wasn't enough, which, questionable decision, but I support it, I'm live on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, where we get to poke at things in real time. I also write over on Substack, because shockingly, I like to have written thoughts. Everything's linked below. This is WriteSparky, and I will see you in the next video.